You're in the water loop. Water loop, water loop, water loop.
Hi, we are in the water loop. I'm Travis, and my guest for this episode is Dr. Wallace J. Nichols. He is the author of Blue Mind and has done many other things with books and speaking and a lot of different endeavors. Thank you for making some time to jump on here and talk.
My pleasure. It's great to see you and great to talk to you.
Yeah, as I mentioned offline, Waterloop is a new podcast, and I wanted you to be my first guest because I think your work and this whole Blue Mind concept or Blue Mind reality really represents a lot about who I am as a person and why I feel so connected to water. And so I wanted you to be the first guest for that reason. So for people that might not be familiar with Blue Mind, what is it? What's this all about?
Well, Blue Mind is just a phrase that refers to something that you and I and probably everybody listening here knows quite well. The way we feel, which is generally a good feeling when we're near, in, on, or underwater, and we want to be. Of course. So if the water's coming through your ceiling or filling your basement, that is not blue mind. That's something we call red mind. But when you want to be there, it's that feeling you get, that refreshed, reset, connected to yourself, connected to the people you're with, your loved ones, connected to the place. That feeling. And I've felt that my whole life, and I think I could probably describe my life as the relentless pursuit of that feeling, both in work and play, where I live, where we vacation as a family, where I go to think, where I go to mourn and grieve in those times, where we go to celebrate, where we have ceremonies. It's always about water. And as a marine biologist, I never learned about that stuff. We were not taught about the cognitive, emotional, psychological, social, spiritual, physical benefits of healthy waters. We're talking about all the other stuff, which is really important. So as a scientist, I would say curious, beyond curious about this thing, this force, right, that has driven my life, essentially, dictated where and how I live. And so I went looking for a book about that feeling.
When did you go looking for that? When did you realize, wait a minute, there's something here?
You know, I would say I've always felt it. And then as an academic, as a researcher, I've always incorporated it. But kind of in the early 2010s, I got late, I'd say 2008, 2009. I got kind of serious about, the neuropsychology stuff. And I thought, so put it in the context, there were a whole bunch of cool projects going on in the world that were connecting brain science and the things we care most about, like music and art, and economics and decision making, and of course, health. And I was seeing all of these sectors engage with neuropsychology in productive ways. And I figured, oh, wow, water and our brain, there could be something there. There's probably a book about that. When I was looking for it, I couldn't find it. So I thought, well, maybe it's out of print. Maybe it's in German. Maybe it's in Japanese. You do, but, the different kinds of searching that you learn how to do when you're in academia, the deep searching. And I didn't find anything. I found some studies, but they hadn't been connected. The dots hadn't been connected. So then I tried to get somebody else to write the book that I wanted to read, so that I could read it and use it to support the work that we do for the ocean. And I failed miserably at that job. Nobody would take this proposal and run with it. So the third piece of the story is I wrote it. So that took 5 years. To be careful what you wish for, I guess, is sort of part of the lesson there. But also when you find a need that truly is a need, and there's a vacuum, fill it. Step in there and make it happen. Whether you do it yourself or you gather the resources and pull the team together and hand it off. But when there's a need in a vacuum, just move into that space. And so backing off of the Blue Mind theme a little bit, that's always the way I've worked. I don't like redundancy. In many things that I've worked on, as soon as the space became crowded, I'm out. I don't want to be one of 1,000 organizations doing exactly the same thing, saying exactly the same thing, competing for a small pie of resources. So as soon as I like to jump into new big things and get it going, and then once it's going, jump to the next big thing.
Yeah.
So this was perfect. There was an open space and a need for, I perceived a need for this conversation to happen. And so, long answer to your very simple question, what is Blue Mind? It's the phrase, the 2-word phrase that simply describes this feeling that it turns out many, many millions of people feel, but didn't quite have the words to articulate. And I hear that over and over again. People say, you gave me the words, your book gave me the words to describe something I couldn't describe to my friends, to my family, to my loved ones, to my spouse. And so that's really it. That's kind of the simplest version of it is, describes the way we feel, the positive way we feel when we're in or near water.
And, you mentioned how it gives the book and the concept gives people the words to describe what they've always felt. And I think the thing that really jumps out is it does this through some pretty serious, neuroscience, right? Through the science of the brain and research that's happened around there. And as you really set that up in the book, is talking about how the brain works, and then start to talk about how water feeds into that and kind of the interplay there. And I'm already quickly out of my expertise, alpha, beta, theta, and all these different waves going on, right? So this isn't just some kind of, feel-good concept thing with Blue Mind. It's actual, real hard science. Could you talk about kind of the neuroscience brain research end of this and how you looked at that and generally what's going on in the brain?
Yeah, so, broadly speaking, the science of our emotions is a real thing. It's something that was kind of off limits for a while. 20 years ago, if you said, I'm going to study the science of happiness, or I'm going to study the science of joy, or the science of anger, or the science of relaxation or meditation, people would look at you funny and say that there is no science of happiness. Now you go to that section of the bookstore or the library, and there's a whole section on the science of happiness. And the reason is that these emotions that we used to separate from sort of rational thinking and scientific endeavors are built of us. They're built of our nuts and bolts. They're built of neurons. They're built of neurochemistry. That is innately available to study. So that's kind of like the first broad breakthrough, is that we can study emotions, the building blocks of emotions, as scientists. Now, psychologists have done that for a long time, but some of the work is very subjective. Because we couldn't see inside of our own brains. But now we can. We have the technology that allows us to not only measure our neurochemistry and hormones, but also look at the movement of electricity across our nervous system.
It's amazing. I mean, I was reading, the MRIs and these different, different equipment where they can see what's happening with the electricity of the brain and with neurons. Yeah. And I mean, that's
in real time. That's the kicker, right? It used to be if you wanted to study the human brain, you had to study someone's brain when they were done using it. If you get my drift there. And that's how it went for hundreds of years. We studied the brain, the disembodied brain. We looked at anomalies and injuries and patterns and compared that to how people use that brain in life. And then we created maps and descriptions of what we thought was going on and what brain regions were involved in certain functions. Now we can look at your brain, my brain, any brain, literally, in action. So you can put on a cap, you can put on an EEG that measures electricity in your brain and go surfing or go into a float tank or sit and watch a movie or have a big bowl of spaghetti, drink a glass of red wine, and scientists can see how your brain responds to the world around you. So these tools are now available to us. There is a deeper, greater understanding of how our brains work. We're getting there. There's so much more to do, clearly. And so I look at it through the water lens because we're water dudes and that's what we're obsessed with. So if I was a wine person and a scientist, I might be studying your brain on wine and I'd have like a different kind of book. But I'm a water person, so I'm interested in the brain on water. So we take these tools that are available broadly to study human behavior and response to our environment, and we apply them to this set of questions. Now, water is not a niche. Water is life. That's almost a cliche, but it's true.
Yeah.
We are made of water. We come from water. All of us spent 9 months underwater in the dark inside our own personal float tank called Mom. But we are all about water, whether we realize it or not. So there is no more important conversation than the conversation about water. Now, when you bring in the conversation about human behavior and our mind, wow, that's a hell of a cool conversation. That's a great mashup. It's almost really touches everything we do. So it's so much fun too. So the research that has been going on since my book came out, I think it helped jumpstart even more research. All of it says, yes, this dynamic is real. This is true. Water is good for us in all of these ways. There hasn't been a study that has said, oh yeah, this blue mind thing is BS. There's no effect. There are small effects. There's medium-sized effects, and in some cases, very strong effects that are signaled through the various kinds of research that are going on. So, I encourage people who are interested in the peer review literature side of things to go to Google Scholar and just do a search for blue space or blue health. There's a term blue care that's also being used, and you'll find reams of great studies that you can dive into. I won't try to summarize them all here, except to say the research is increasingly clear. The research will continue, but we're now at a point, I think, where we can pivot to action. Like, how do we take what we now know about the important role of water to our emotional health and improve the systems, whether it's education or healthcare or design, conservation work, can benefit greatly from this conversation. So that's really where I am personally right now is that pivot from trying to prove something and make my case to the feeling that the case is made, and now let's go out and practice it and put it in action.
You said one thing I want to follow up on, and that's about how we came from water. And I think you were talking not about in the womb, but millions and millions of years ago. And you talk about this in the book, and it's something that I'm sure you've felt and others have felt, like when you're by the water, especially for me, by the ocean. I just have like this pull, and feel like I should be in there. That's where I'm supposed to be. That's my home. You know, I have this incredible attraction and peace and everything. And so I think in the book you talk about, right, like we evolved and came out of the sea.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So there's a, there's a real, you can go pretty deep into the, the history of life, and it takes you to the water. So that's, and my PhD is in evolutionary biology and wildlife ecology, so I kind of have a background there. But you can also go, I guess, less deep and look at human history. And back before we had such a great system for distributing water, which essentially modern humans, at least in North America, you're never more than 10 big steps away from running water throughout your day, right? And wherever you are, it's either a garden hose or a tap in the sink in the kitchen or the bathroom. I mean, we're even at work in the office, and we're just pipes with water in it everywhere we go.
wow.
And we've done this incredible job of just piping water all over the continent, really.
Yeah.
And it's an incredible network. Go back a few hundred years and that wasn't there. So and go back a few thousand years and it gets a little more dicey and serious about finding water, carrying water. And even you go back even further and you can imagine people dying, very regularly because they didn't have water. They were in the wrong place at the wrong time and there wasn't any water. And you get less than a week under those conditions and you're done. Mm-hmm. Before that week, your brain function starts to fail. Dehydration is a horrific thing to experience. We're very unfamiliar with true dehydration. So from that perspective, the ability to sense water, have a positive response and move in the correct direction and position yourself relative to that healthy, clean, satisfying water that will keep you alive. That's like human skill number one. Yeah. If you can't do that,
that's it.
Toast, right? You can go a month without eating. You can go a lifetime without love. You can go forever without the internet. But without water, you're not getting through the week. So that we have the basic sort of instinct to respond favorably to the sight and sound of moving water makes sense, right? So we weren't doing studies 3,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, 25,000 years ago. So when you talk like this about human evolution, it's somewhat storytelling, but it makes sense, right? That we would have evolved a skill set. In fact, all animals need to evolve this skill set to locate and retrieve water, whether it's through their food or through standing water. So in that context, Blue Mind makes sense. And then you add the cultural layer where we positively reinforce, the poster on the wall behind you. Most ads in most travel magazines depict some sort of water. Mm-hmm. Increasingly, I can see pharmaceutical ads showing people enjoying water, whether it's surfing, jumping in a pool, walking on the beach. So we associate water and wellness. That if you're walking on the beach, that implies that life is good. You are able-bodied and you're feeling fine. So pharmaceutical companies use that. Subaru uses surfing to sell cars. The list is long. So there's that cultural reinforcement of something that is more sort of archetypal, you could say. So water shows up throughout literature, throughout all spiritual traditions, throughout art, music, poetry, through all cultures, for all human history, in this way that sort of is used to depict sort of a sense of wellness. And so I always quote the 23rd Psalm from the Bible. It's my favorite Psalm. Not everybody has a favorite. Everybody has a favorite Psalm, but that's the one that begins, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil. On a
Yeah.
Blue Mind Psalm. And to me, the paraphrase of it is, when the shit is hitting the fan, get your ass to the water. Say it, right? So when you've got red mind
Yeah.
around you, get your butt down to the water and chill. And there, 3,000 years ago, there it is in this ancient text, and you find the same sentiment across all spiritual traditions. 3,000 years ago, King David told the world, when things are bad, the valley of the shadow of death, how much worse can it get?
It's bad.
Get down to the river, sit down, and chill your ass out. So there it is. Yeah.
All right, you set up my kind of next question really well there, and that's I surf, and you've referenced surfing a couple times. You've referenced that when things are bad, get to the water, and so you mean that's surfing does this incredible thing for me. I mean, I've been a swimmer my whole life. I've done paddling, I've done some diving and all that stuff, but it's surfing that does something like nothing else does. And so I smiled the biggest smile at the line in your book when you say, quote, surfers probably exhibit more blue mind than anyone. I mean, I smiled, I almost cried tears of joy because it's just like, yes, I feel that way. And then I got to read that about kind of the explanation. And so I'd love for you to explain why you say that.
Yeah, so surfing puts it all together. There are many activities, and I think we both share a love for most, if not all of them. Surfing kind of puts it all together on a small day, on a big day, on a scary day, when you're learning, when you're out surfing with your loved ones, with your friends. It puts all of the best of Blue Mind together. And every day is different. So there's sort of an axiom in marketing 101, which is repetition with novelty. That is sort of your equation. Just like log that idea in the back of your head and use it. If you do repetition without novelty, people ignore what you're saying and they no longer hear it. So the car alarm is going off, and then after 10 minutes, you don't notice it anymore. If your marketing is about repetition but not novelty, then it's ignored. If it's just novelty without any repetition, it's always different. It's confusion. So when you combine those two things, you get people remember, which is the goal of marketing. So what does that have to do with surfing? Surf repetition with novelty. It's the same activity. You might be using the same board or 3 or 4, depending on how many boards you have. It's always waves, but then the novelty comes in. None of the waves are the same. The color of the water is different every time. Sometimes there's wildlife out there. It's just constantly changing.
Yeah.
So it's the same, but it's different, and so that's appealing to our monkey minds, right? We like that. We don't want it to always be the same. Even the wave parks that are being created, you can dial up and dial down and change the wave. If you could, I think their business model wouldn't be as strong.
Yeah.
But you can change even the manufactured waves must be changeable. So that's part of it. The whole process you go through when you begin to surf from start. If you were going to go surfing right now after this interview, and you decided right now that was the case, your brain chemistry would start to change right now.
Oh yeah, just saying that spiked it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that surfing begins and ends well before and way after you're in or out of the water. It extends through the story that night that you're telling about the wave you got. Surfers love to stand around and go around and drink beers and tell the story, right?
Yeah.
And so that storytelling fires you up. You empathize with the storyteller, and you experience some smaller version of what they experienced, and they're experiencing it again by telling the story. So on all of those levels, it's just kind of very emotionally valent, I guess you could say, very personal, but also very shareable, very social. So it's the perfect kind of package for Blue Mind, really.
Yeah.
Except for when it isn't, when it's crowded or polluted or way too big and way too scary,
Right.
deadly, then that's red mind. But it's even that mix of a little bit of that red mind with the blue mind that makes it the repetition with novelty component. So you never know who else is going to be out there. You never know if a bigger wave is going to come and kick your butt. Or there might be some wildlife, that you don't really want to be surfing with. So
I love the when you explained also that, from the exercise standpoint, you're out there, you're surfing, and you get the adrenaline going, and then you get the dopamine going, and so you're just having all that great stuff flowing through your head, and then, like surfers know, you come out and you're just like stoked for a couple hours. It just feels so good. And you're like, that's the endorphins just kind of lasting and lingering in your body. And man, that's like the greatest.
And a lot of the research is not specifically, the research that backs up the statement you just made is not specifically all on surfing. It's on exercise. There's way more research about your brain on exercise and all the neurological and emotional benefits of exercise. So that's a piece of, to your point, what's going on. A day on the water is a hell of a workout. I mean, you work your muscles pretty hard. And so you've got all of the benefits of that, just exercise going on. But there's a neuroscientist named John Medina who wrote a book called Brain Rules, and I highly recommend it. And what he said is, this is a great summary of the book: we are at our best when we are outside, in motion, solving problems together. And surfing is kind of that. You're outside, obviously. You're in motion, you're exercising. That's the exercise piece. You're solving problems. You're reading the tides, you're reading the wind, you're reading the waves, you're reading the wildlife, you got currents, you got fellow watermen and women that you're, navigating. And you're together oftentimes. It can be a very social, can be a very solo activity, but it's best when, there's some social element to it. And so just to, that little equation there, outside in motion, solving problems together, lines up really nicely with this activity we call surfing, and many other activities that involve water as well.
And I think a lot of this also makes surfing so addictive, right? You talk about how actually addictive it is because of this, all that's going on in your brain and with your body, and it's just like you just want more and more of that. And it's hard sometimes to explain that to non-surfers, or for them to understand, that if you haven't been for a couple of days, you're like crawling up the walls in your house to get out there. So
at our first Blue Mind Summit that we did at the California Academy of Sciences, a neuroscientist named Mike Merzenich asked him to give the closing keynote, which basically was to sit in the room all day and then at the end of the day say whatever he wanted for as long as he needed. And he's a brilliant scientist. And one of the things he said was that the human brain, the human nervous system, the human condition is prone to addiction. And it can have horrible consequences. However, if it can be harnessed as a force for good, then that's a pretty interesting proposition. So if you can become addicted to things that make your life better, make you stronger, make your your business better, make your family, make your community, make your nation stronger, you can become addicted to those things. Wow, there's no stopping us. And
Yeah.
that does happen occasionally. And if you become addicted to things that tear you apart, tear your family apart, tear your body apart, and then eventually tear your community and country apart, well, that's not good. So how can we do that? And I think to your point, that the addictive qualities of athletic activities, especially ones that are so cognitively stimulating and satisfying, that's an example of a good addiction. And we all know people who have even taken that good addiction a little too far,
Right.
or we may be those people, and interfered with their relationships and career, and you don't show up for work because the waves are good, you may not end up with a job.
Right.
So
yeah, it reminds me of a legendary surfer, the late Andy Irons, and I think he said at one point, like, I surf because I come out of the water a better person, and that always resonated. You come out and you feel you treat people better, honestly, and all that. But I want to ask you quickly about a couple other water endeavors and just kind of get your thoughts on them. Swimming, diving, and float tanks. And kind of what's going on with each of those, because same thing. I swam competitively from when I was young until college, and that's what I do for my exercise if I can't get in the ocean or whatever. And it's just the same thing. It feels very therapeutic, obviously for the exercise components, but what else about swimming?
Yeah, so lap swimming can be boring. We know.
True.
If you swim competitively, there's an element to it there's a little bit of dread sometimes. Those morning workouts where you're just like, I don't want to do this. You hit the water, you still don't want to do it. 30 seconds in, you're feeling it, and then it's all good. But swimmers know that experience. Open water swimming changes that up a bit. So take your desire to swim and point it towards a river, a lake, or the open ocean, and now you're having a whole different experience. But and increasingly, people are using pools therapeutically, but not for lap swimming, for basically doing the whole range of CrossFit exercise activities in the water. So weightlifting, resistance training, treadmills, exercise bikes, a whole range of different movements. You look online and you'll see some incredible examples of people coaching competitive athletes in the water. So the entire range of movement that your body goes through to do just a full-on, mind-blowing slam dunk of a basketball. The arms over the head and the arch back and the giant leap. You can practice that in water and reduce the amount of injury, extend your flexibility in a whole really cool way, improve your strength, your range of motion. So from a swimming perspective, that's the evolution of swimming that I'm seeing, is repurposing pools to be more aquatic gyms or blue gyms. So that's exciting and interesting, and I would say watch that space. And it isn't just for competitive athletes, it's for rehab of any kind, and also for people who are aging, slowing down. Joints don't like gravity anymore. You can take it into the water and you'll be better off. So that sort of segues a bit to your question about float tanks. So a float tank is basically a small pool filled with Epsom salt and water, and you don't move very much. There's very little light, no sound, other than the sound of your own body. The water, your body, and the air are all the same temperature. And so it's the most nothing you've ever experienced. Turns out, when there's no information coming into our nervous system or close to it, we don't just turn off, we turn on in a completely different way. And so I recommend, if you haven't tried
I haven't. No.
Do it. Just put it on your short list of things I must do this month and figure out how to do it. I would say sign up for 2 1 hour or 90-minute sessions, maybe 3.
Okay.
Just give it a full try. You may say, wow, that was really weird. I'm never doing that again. And then you'll have this story you can tell about the weird thing you did.
Yeah.
Or you'll say, wow, that was really cool. I'm going to do that again. Or for some people, it becomes a monthly or weekly routine, including many elite athletes. So players on the Golden State Warriors, including Steph Curry, and players on the New England Patriots and the Chicago Cubs, and go right down the list, use float therapy as part of their athletic training regime. Wow. So creative people use it to access a different part of their thinking. And just mildly stressed out people get benefits from it. So
cool. There's a float place pretty close to my house that I've driven by and seen, but I've never done it. So I will on doctor's orders, I will give it I'll give it a
so here's the tip, and this is for everyone. Go in, say that you want the special Blue Mind discount, and you want the 3 introductory float package, and then see what kind of deal you can get. It'll save you a couple of bucks at least.
All right.
And I've spoken at the float conference, keynoted it, and so I know the industry has grown a lot. So I know a lot of the leaders in that space, and it's great. It's really, I think, a positive development in healthcare.
One more sport before I ask my last question, and that's just about diving.
Yeah.
I've done more free diving than scuba diving, but I love how you talked about, that's just the full immersion, right? You're immersed. There's no gravity and the buoyancy factor, and you describe how you're like, you're actually pushing through the water. You're moving water all around you, and so could you talk about kind of the diving side of things?
Yeah, so you can kind of start to see the continuum from what you could say was extreme blue mind, which you might experience in a float, or the epic surf day, and then something more mild, which might happen in your bathroom, in the shower or at the tub, and then things that are in between. And I say free diving is more on the extreme blue mind end of the spectrum. When you've got your breath hold well developed and you're feeling confident, and you can stay under for several minutes, you experience this kind of bliss. And part of the blue mind experience is what is taken away as much as it is what you get. So when you're say, let's just say 50 feet underwater, and you're holding your breath, and you're comfortable, and you don't feel panic, and you're looking around and you're checking out the world under there, you're not going to get a text message. You're not going to hear any human voices. You're not going to hear somebody say your name, I need you to help me with this thing. You're not going to hear leaf blowers and lawnmowers. There are no screens. All of that chatter that we take for granted that fills our lives more and more and more, it's all gone, right? And you're alone kind of with your thoughts, but you're not completely alone. There's the life around you. But then you're kind of squeezed in a way. So there's some pressure that holds you. And so there's the somatic, your body is having an experience as well, which you may not even be that conscious of, but it's no surprise that people with certain kinds of anxiety will find it easier to sleep with heavy weighted blankets. That's a therapeutic activity that's become more popular. So being underwater is like the ultimate therapy blanket, in a way. It's squeezing in all from every direction all around you. That feels good. I mean, it feels held. And so you have that experience as well. And all of this, of course, builds off of wanting to be there. A drowning scenario or a forced submergence scenario is not what we're talking about.
Sure.
We're talking about competent, comfortable, purposeful water experiences. And so freediving is a great example. You know, scuba diving as well. But I'm a scuba diver, and I have been a much more active free diver in the past. And I like having less gear, more and more and more. The less stuff I have, I like to be free of those limitations.
Yeah, no, makes sense a lot. I guess my last question for you is all this we've talked about as we're sitting here on Skype and watching clocks and talking about text messages and everything. We have this crazy busy world we're in. We've got technology just kind of taking over, and there's news coming at us, and the world's stressful and all this stuff. And so it just seems like this is a time to really, like I think you alluded to from the beginning, take advantage of what's been realized here and what science shows with the power of water, and use it for therapeutic and keeping yourself grounded in nature and reality and all that.
Yeah, I think it's a simple reminder that just put it in the back of your head that whatever the situation that you need, you're working on, whether it's a difficult conversation, a stressful day, if you're raising a child, if you're in need of a boost in creativity, if you're really sad and you really need to grieve, whatever it is that's going on in your life, put this on your water. So whatever if I said, hey, Chop, we got to talk. We got some serious stuff to work on. Let's go to the beach. Right? Do it there.
Yeah.
Let's go for a walk by the river. Let's get in the hot tub. Let's get in the pool and have the conversation nearer in the water. And so throughout your life, that would be my simple message is consider water your medicine and your friend, and in whatever capacity that makes sense. So and just put it right there on at the top of the list as one of the tools that can help you do you better.
Yeah.
And wherever you are, so you're lucky, I'm lucky, we live near the ocean, but wherever you are, there's great lakes, rivers, ponds, creeks, pools, tubs, and it's all available to all of us, remarkably, wherever you are. So it is no excuses, really.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I'm glad you were the first guest I had on Waterloop. I appreciate the time. People definitely, if they haven't checked out your book, they should check out your book and all that stuff. But yeah, thank you so much, and look forward to connecting in person at some point, somewhere by water.
Yeah. Well, we do this will be the 6th year. We do every year we do an online book club, starting on January 20th. And you don't even need a book. So this is not a pitch for selling books. This is just a pitch for joining the conversation. But I get on Facebook Live and read a little bit of the book every evening.
Oh, cool.
West Coast time at 5, 8 o'clock East Coast time, wherever I am. I'll just, whether it's on my phone or my laptop, if I'm in an airport or on a beach or in the kitchen, I'll just get on and read a few pages, and we'll chat about it. And people always have great comments. So if you're not much of a reader, but you feel like you want to read the book, but you're not going to actually read it, maybe you just want to listen to a bedtime story for a bunch of days in a row. Or
come follow you on social media. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm easy to find, and yeah, just throw that out there.
All right. It sounds good. Well, hey, thank you so much, and yeah, take care.
Yeah, you too. Yeah.
Bye.
You're in the water loop.